Two, one. Good afternoon, Crystal. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Fine as frogs here. Fine as
Oh,
frogs.
good.
As you know,
Didn't
of
know they
course,
had hair, but okay.
it's very fine. Very, very fine.
Very fine. Okay. Mhm.
So as usual, I'm stoked about this program we're going to talk about this particular topic because so many times a plan sponsor will have a retirement plan and and it just kind of gets away from them because they don't really pay attention to us. That's what we're going to talk about today. But then you
Okay.
might ask also, okay, why should I, as a participant, be worried about this? And so we're going to spend a few minutes talking about that as well. If you're a participant in a plan, why do you need to know this? I mean, why does it concern you? So
Hmm.
that's what we're going to do. So
Okay.
first, I will read your bio, and the topic is is your compliance committee leaving you out to dry, or is it doing what it's supposed to do? Your 401k compliance committee. So
Okay.
everyone, if you would help me welcome my friend and colleague Crystal Mitchell, I will read her bio. Here we go. Crystal Mitchell is a business coach and consultant. She's the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, co-director of Recycling Black Dollars. She's also the co-host of another radio show called The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. I just saw one of the YouTubes the other day, so it's real, which is cool. And she's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and a QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. Hey, Crystal, how you doing?
Hey, I'm well. Everything is well. We're ending um, Women's History Month, and I attended a really beautiful event this weekend celebrating women. So I'm good. And spent a little
Oh,
time
great.
in my garden trying to get it back.
Oh,
We're
good.
trying to
Good. How's that
recover the
coming?
back. Ah, it's okay. Yeah, we still got work to do. we 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 got work, but we're taking care of the plants that survived the journey the last 6 months.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, Women's History Month, that's a great topic. We're actually in my book club reading a book about women soldiers in Vietnam, which is pretty cool. So
Okay.
pretty excited about that. But let's get
All
going.
right.
Our topic is uh, surrounding your compliance committee with regard to your 401k plan. So, many folks feel if they're going to start a retirement plan that in actuality, the only thing they really have to have is an annual meeting. And they pretty much figure the advisor is going to do that, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what do they really need to do? But I like to say that, it's not the advisor's retirement plan, it's actually the retirement plan of the organization. And if you don't do things the right way, not that they're onerous, at least from my point of view, but if you don't do things the right way, it's the folks who have the fiduciary responsibility, i.e., the owner of the organization, the board of directors, whoever has that oversight responsibility on the retirement plan. Their assets are on the chopping block, jointly and severally. So it's not like if the plan goes wrong and you just happen to be on the board that you get away. That's
Mm-hmm.
not how this thing works. So it's for that reason that I try to express to my fellow advisors and plan sponsors that it is an employee benefit. It is designed for the employees, and you have to act in the best interest of the employees. Even though I've never met anyone that started a company so they could help other people retire. I mean, let's get real here, right? But when we're using one of these plans, we need to make sure that it is being governed correctly. And
Right.
most times, in my notes I have here, there's no structure to the meeting. And here's the biggie. Here's the real big one. No documentation.
Oh.
I used to work for a lady, and she would say, I was back in another industry. She would say, if it ain't there, it ain't there. That's the way it goes with regard to your retirement plans. If it ain't there, it didn't happen. So make sure you get that documentation. Okay, so what is it that we need to do? The first thing to realize is that number one, and this is for our clip, having a plan is not the same as managing the
Mm. Yeah,
plan.
I would think so.
Right.
Mhm.
And the next thing that we have to take a look at is what I just alluded to, and that is if there are no minutes, there is no defense. So if your job is to make sure that the plan runs effectively and efficiently,
Mhm.
whether your participants make money is not the overall importance. What's really important is that you run the plan for the best interest of those participants. If they decide that they're going to put their money in something that isn't appropriate for them, that's not
Mhm.
up to you. We have free will here. But you do need to make sure that when you make decisions, that they're documented and the reason that you made them is documented as well. So that if someone should happen to sue you, you've got you have a defense, right? And this is another time for one of those clips, which would be no minutes, no defense.
Which is interesting, being that these would be corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, corporations, and the biggest piece of a corporation is your minutes for your those are your corporate minutes. So you would think anything that you were any meeting that you were having that pertained to the structure in the corporation itself, that there would be that.
You would, and I think if you're in a larger organization, uh, the minutes are probably taken. They're probably signed off on, accounted for. Uh, but in my experience, the Department of Labor doesn't go after necessarily large companies anymore. They've been put on notice that they have to have minutes,
Ah,
they have to have recordings. It's
right.
the smaller slash medium sized companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've got 50 employees, maybe you have $10 million worth of assets in your plant or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the companies that they're just trying to make money. They're just trying to get going, right? I mean, they're just trying to make sure that uh, the doors are open and things happen. They got a lot. Most of those folks have a lot of things on their plate, so they may say, "Yeah, we have the 401(k) plan. Okay, what do we need to do? Keep me out of
Mm.
trouble."
Okay.
And the most important thing that you can do to keep yourself out of trouble is document your decisions.
Mm.
That's
Okay.
that's the deal.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then. So yeah, the companies, smaller companies, are not as clued in to that as bigger companies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's time for another clip, and that would be most committees meet, but they don't manage. So
Mm.
that means documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what is it? What is it they really need to do? What are we talking about? What kind of documentation do we mean here? Well, number one, you got to have the meeting. It doesn't have to be all the time, once a month. It's best, depending on the size of your organization and your needs, to have at least a quarterly meeting, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are out here trying to make a widget, so that may not be appropriate, but at least I would say once a year. The
Okay.
second thing is you need to do that investment monitoring. You need to find a way to do that. Your advisor should be able to provide that, but you need to do that. Lots of times we can get that from the from the record keeper, the people that actually have the money. They can give you an annual update as to how the funds are progressing, and you can figure out a way as to how you judge those. And I think that's very appropriate. And there are systems out there that do that. I've worked with lots of companies that create their own system. And that kind of goes right in line with what we call an investment policy statement that
Mm-hmm.
puts down when you're going to move plans out and what kind of plans you are and the goals of the retirement plan, which is very important. And then I would say even at least as important as that, as at least important as monitoring the investments. And let's jump back because when we say investment monitoring, we're not suggesting that the best fund is always the most appropriate, right? Because we do want to have a well diversified portfolio. So, in a retirement plan, we like the idea of funds going up and funds going down. People make money when funds go down. That is, they don't return as much as they necessarily could have. So, having a well diversified lineup is very important. Having an opportunity for your participants to buy cheap is very important, but not not documenting that is a problem. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, always you got to have documentation. You just can't function without documentation. That's what happens when you don't have a memory,
Exactly.
which is which
And
is
next on
not
the list, I think
unrare.
there you go.
Go ahead.
Number four is going to be you got to benchmark the plan. The Department of Labor suggests that you benchmark the plan every 3 to 4 years. And benchmarking just means that you take the plan out to bid. It doesn't mean that you have to move the plan. It certainly does not mean you have to move the plan. But it does mean you, as the fiduciary responsibilities, need to know that your plan is priced appropriately. And I think the Department of Labor is very, very clear on this in a way by not being clear, that they're suggesting that just as there are all kinds of cars on the road and no one particular car is going to meet everyone's needs, no one particular price or fee structure is going to meet every plan's needs. So the Department of Labor is suggesting that you need to benchmark your plan every 2 to 3 to 4 years on a regular basis, but it doesn't have to look like everybody else's plan. And if your plan is working for you, if your participants are reaching their retirement goals, and if you are monitoring the assets, and if you know that your plan is a little bit more expensive, or that's a little bit less expensive, and you're not getting the services that you could, or what have you. But if your services match the price that you're paying, this is a good thing as long as you document,
Mm.
right? And that's one of my big I don't know what you call it, big red spot thing, big
Mm.
thing there is that you don't have
When
to
you
move
go
the
in
plan.
and when you
What's
go
that?
in to do your auditing, you
Yeah,
you,
that kind
you
of
that's
thing.
the first thing you look for is whether or not
I
there's.
do. How often have you documented the plan?
Mm.
Benchmark the plan, right? Because you don't know if your plan is operating appropriately until you benchmark it. You don't know if you're priced competitively until you benchmark it. And you want to do that. You don't need to be the cheapest. You could be the most expensive if you can justify it. So,
Mm.
time for the clip. A good plan is run by a committee that improves performance. And the only way you can do that is to measure it. And the
Okay.
best way to measure that is benchmark the plan. The last thing, and this is something that I haven't seen very many plans do, but I do think it's incredibly important. The last thing is uh, participant outcome tracking. It's one thing to say, okay, we have automatic enrollment, so everybody's in the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Not success, right? Okay, so we got everybody in the plan and they're contributing 3%. Great. Not quite good enough because most people need to contribute 10 to 15%. Okay, everybody's in the plan. They're putting in their 3%. We are matching and we're stretching that to 6% so that if a person puts in 5%, we're going to put in 4%. So we're getting everybody up to 9. Great. We need to have folks between 10 and 15% in general. So is your plan designed to help people actually reach their retirement goal, right? And how are you measuring that? And a great way to measure that is outcome tracking. And it's not so tough. You can just call up the record keeper and say, okay, how many participants are on the road to reach the retirement goals? And they can tell you. It's not that tough. I can tell you. But having that documented is a good thing.
And that's the
So
committee's responsibility.
it's the committee's responsibility.
Okay.
So in closing, I would say if your advisor isn't helping you get all these things done, then you should ask them. And if they poo poo, they may just be looking for an opportunity to talk to you so that they can actually do all these things for you, or at least point you to do all those things, or work with your record keeper to help you have those things, right? But if you ask your advisor if they're doing these things for you and they say, well, I don't think that's important, run, get rid of them, and hire
Mm,
someone who is going to help you make sure that your committee is doing the right job. Now, why would you say this is important for somebody that is not a committee member? Well, I'll tell you why. Let's say your plan never gets benchmarked, and none of the investments are monitored, and none of the participants are tracked to see if they're going to reach their retirement goal. So the plan's not operating at the best interest for participants. So the Department of Labor may assess fines, I'm sorry, on the
mhm,
fiduciary folks, right? And or they may decide, you know what, this plan's out of compliance, we're shutting it down. And all of that money that you had contributed to the plan, it is now income,
mm,
which
mm.
means you get to pay taxes on it. Not
Right,
good.
right.
Not good.
That
Right.
for sure, not good. I mean,
Not
because that's the whole idea. I mean, the tax piece.
exactly.
Hmm.
Being able to save in a tax deferred way or
Hmm.
tax free manner. So if you're a participant, you should feel very comfortable going up to your HR person or the whoever's on the committee. And in general, there's usually someone from the employee ranks, someone outside of HR, someone outside of the leadership team, somebody from the employees that is on that committee. So you should be able to go up to that person at least and say, hey, when was the last time our plan was benchmarked? Are we paying a competitive rate? Right? Are these investments good for us? How do you know that?
Mm.
Because you want to make sure that your plan's in compliance and that you're able to keep making the contributions you can in that tax deferred manner or in that tax free growth manner.
Yeah, exactly. And then, as I said, and I think in our discussion last week, I also said that knowing what your plan is investing in, making sure it aligns with you and your philosophies. And
I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think we talked about it last night. So let's take a couple of minutes. Last night, I'm sorry, last week, middle of
okay.
the year. But there was a time when I first got when I first got into this business, where uh, socially responsible funds investments were not thought very highly of. In fact, I remember being on the phone, one of those customer service people that you call, and this
Hmm.
woman said, I would like to invest in a socially responsible fund. And by that, I mean, which was very important, a fund that
Hmm.
doesn't invest in alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. Okay. All right. So that's cool. So we had to find that for her. And it was very difficult.
Mm.
Showing my age here. That was back in the day. Now it's very easy to find socially responsible funds. In fact, there are whole companies out there, and that's all they do. I'm not
Okay.
going to say the name, but one of my favorites is a company that does that.
Mm.
Wonderful investments, all socially responsible. The problem, though, becomes what does socially responsible mean? It's a huge category. Does it mean that they don't invest in things like pornography and tobacco? Does it mean that they invest in tobacco but not firearms? Does it mean that
Hmm.
they don't invest in pornography or tobacco or firearms, but they do invest in companies that don't necessarily have clean energy requirements or don't have a socially conscious bent to their marketing and to their vendors. So it's a big thing. But to your point, it's important to lots of folks, and you as an investor, as a participant, have the right to have at least socially conscious investments. Right? So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. And if you don't have that, then that's a real problem. That's a real problem. The SEC has directed that I help people get those kinds of investments as a retirement plan advisor. So they're out there, and we can get them most times, and we will if you want them. You just got to let us know.
Yeah, exactly. And today, everybody's, you know, quite conscious of what's going on in their world. And so they want to make sure that it just aligns with you. I
Yeah,
mean, most of us are standing on our principles nowadays. And
yeah,
so everything needs to fall in line, especially, money, your money that you're investing.
yeah. There was a time when if you were going to do a socially responsible investment, you had to accept that you weren't going to make as much money as someone who did not do that. I don't
Right.
think that barrier exists. I don't think that line exists. At least it doesn't to the extent that it used to. So right, so now and for the oh goodness, for the past few years,
Uh-huh.
it's been an opportunity, and it's sometimes these socially conscious funds actually outperform other funds. And let's not forget about um, the S&P 500, the growth portion of the S&P 500. At one time, a huge portion of the companies that fueled the growth of the S&P 500 were, in effect, socially conscious. They were international companies, and they needed to make sure that they complied with all the rules around the world. And so that, in effect, made them socially conscious. So don't think that just because you want a socially conscious investment that you're going to be lagging with regard to your investment performance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes all the sense in the world.
Cool. Well, if you don't have any more questions for me, I'm going to read your bio once more and give you the last word. How's that?
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, everyone, you've been listening to On the Patio with my friend and colleague, Crystal Mitchell. I am Jevon Thomas, a retirement plan advisor. However, Crystal is a business coach and consultant. She's the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions, co director of Recycling Black Dollar. She's also the co host of another weekly online, I don't know, do we call this an online radio show? Is that what we call it?
Podcast. It's a podcast.
Podcast. Call it a podcast.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Called The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. So please check that out. She's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and last but not least, a QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. Crystal, thanks for joining us. Give us your last word.
Okay, thank you. And another great topic. Again, I think making sure that everything is documented is really important, especially when you're about to retire. You don't want anybody to have forgot to dot the I's and cross the T's to delay that process.
Well said. Well said.
So you want to ensure. So, and I think we've been saying this all along, Javon, even the employee has to be much more connected to what is going on because it is their money. It's going to be their retirement. And so you want to ask questions. You want to push if you don't get answers. And then, of course, you want to be able to know exactly who your retirement plan advisor is so that maybe you have to do the phone calling if you're not getting that information because, you don't want to wait. It's too late once it's time, you're getting the having the going away party and going, "Hey, I'm going away," but wait a minute, what? So
Indeed.
that's my
Indeed.
last word.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's spot on. Exactly spot on. I agree fully. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week on the patio, and have a great week.
See you guys. Bye bye. Have a great one.